the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua. And today's question is, how do you go from a pint of beer to a revolutionary marketing business idea? Where our guest today is exactly the man to answer that question. Simon Dell began his marketing journey in 2004, transitioning from a sales role at Lion Nathan to trade marketing beer. In 2009, he founded Two Cents, a full service marketing agency, and after 6 years, he launched SEMO in 2020. Did I mention that right, SEMO?
You did. You did.
Uh,
You're one of the very few people that gets that right first time. So well
all
done.
right. You launched that 2020 with Matt Clarkson. Despite launching during a global pandemic, SEMO has become a leading supplier of marketing consultants in Australia, pioneering the concept of fractional marketing teams. Very interesting. Simon has mentored over 300 businesses and spoken for numerous organizations, including Facebook. He lives in Brisbane, supports Tottenham Hotspur, writes science fiction novels, and is a single dad to two boys. Simo helps businesses hire experienced marketers on a flexible basis, addressing one of the biggest challenges in business. Simon Dell, along with his partner Matt, brings 40 years of combined marketing experience to deliver top-notch marketing talent, and today he delivers his insight and wisdom to us. Simon, thank you for coming on to the show. How are you doing?
I'm very good. It was good that you got SEMO right, but you kind of almost got Tottenham wrong. But
Oh
that's
no, yeah, I always got Tottenham wrong. Like Tottenham Hotspur. Well,
there we go.
I can't get that wrong. Of course, I mean,
No, no. But you
Simon,
did well with
it's
SEMO, so that's good.
thank you so much for coming on once again, Simon. I really want to get into this, but before we do, I always like to start from the beginning. Where did it all begin? So, Simon, your marketing journey started in 2004 with Lion Nathan. What initially drew you to marketing? And as a child, did you always know you were going to get into marketing? What is the story of Simon Dell?
No, at school I was going to be an aircraft controller for some reason.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know why I wanted to do that. That was the big dream when I was a
Mhm,
teenager.
mhm,
And then as I sort of went through school, I wanted to be a lawyer.
mhm.
Um, and I went to I did law at university, so I have a degree in law.
All right.
Um, but I got out of that. I got out of university and went, no, I don't want to do that
Mhm.
because it's just law's very boring.
Right.
Um, and what sort of happened was at university, I'd spent a lot of time organizing things. I'm one of my sort of habits or one of my personality traits is I'm an organizer.
Mhm,
So, whether it's for friends or whether it's social things or whether it's kids' sports teams, I tend to always do the organizing.
mhm.
And that sort of came to a fore at university. And the sort of natural progression after that was to move into hospitality. So I was running pubs and bars and nightclubs
Right.
and all those kind of things, places where people drank and danced and had fun.
Right.
And that sort of then evolved into selling beer. That was another transition.
Mhm.
And when I was moved to Australia, within the role that I was doing at Lion Nathan, they offered me the opportunity to move from sales to marketing, and kind of not looked back since.
Wow. So it's been a long journey as well, but talk to us a little bit about that. You started at Lion Nathan and you got into marketing. And well, first you got into law. Law is obviously, like you said, boring, and marketing is a little bit more entertaining than that,
Yeah,
right? But what
yeah.
initially drew you to this leap in marketing, from marketing beer to founding your own agencies? But initially,
I was
why marketing?
always
Go.
Yeah, I was always fascinated with. I'd done a lot of reading, a lot of marketing reading, a lot of books around branding, advertising. My father's background was actually advertising. He worked for
Right.
many years with big advertising agencies. So
Hmm.
there was definitely an influence from him in the marketing space. All my sort of jobs, I'd done in summer holidays and at university had been in
Right.
printing companies, advertising agencies, things like that. So I'd been exposed to it early on. So when that offer came up, that sort of felt like a natural progression, sort of
Hmm.
following on in his footsteps. So yeah, it kind of felt like that was the way to go, really.
Right. And so advertising, your dad was into advertising, you were always interested, you got into marketing, and now you've gone on to founding, you first founded 2 Cents and then SEMO. Talk to us a bit
Yeah,
about that transition. You first did 2 Cents, which is also a full marketing service agency,
yeah,
and after
yeah.
SEMO is in 20 years, after 6 years, you did SEMO. What was the transition in there, and how did you begin founding 2 Cents first?
2 Cents was I was just working doing consulting on my own, and I just met someone. I was introduced to somebody through somebody else. It was just a network thing.
Mhm,
And he offered to help me out. He was, hey, look, he wanted to come in as a business partner. He had offices, he had staff already.
mhm,
He kind of saw what I was trying to do from the vision perspective,
mhm.
and he sort of bought into it. And so that's sort of how 2 Cents was formed. We ran that for 6 years, and I say to everybody that it was run so badly. I
Whoa.
was. Um, it's not something you often hear people admit, certainly with people
Mhm,
in businesses, but it was just run appallingly. Not from a quality of work and not from a client perspective, but the back end, certainly the financial side of things, was just.
mhm,
I had no financial experience, so
mhm,
that was a big weakness in my skill set. And my business partner, he at the time, he wasn't particularly financially focused either. So it was just badly run,
wow.
and I got the opportunity to sort of sell it after 6 years, and I
Mhm,
took that because I sort of felt that I'd done as much as I could with it, and I
right.
sort of needed to reset. I
Mhm,
needed to kind of stop and reset again. And it was just at the same time my first son was born as well, so it all kind of there was a moment when I sort of drew a line in the sand and went, I need to stop doing that. I've got a family on the way,
mhm,
you know. Um, so that sort of happened, and then I just went back to consulting for a couple of years,
right.
and then once again met Matt through my through my network. Somebody introduced us, and the
This
big
is
difference, and
interesting. This is
the big
perfect
difference.
because go
Sorry,
ahead.
go on.
Yeah, and because it's interesting because the next question was like, what were the biggest lessons that you took from that, from your first agency? Because you're talking about 2 Cents badly run. You felt like you did everything you could, but fortunately, you had an opportunity to exit, which was good for you. But then you have, you take those lessons, you move along. But what then did you take from that? Now you've met Matt, and how did
Yeah,
that influence your approach with SEMO?
two lessons. Number one, and I share this with a lot of other business founders. You may not be the best person to be running a business on your own,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes you have to accept your fallibilities, your weaknesses. You have to accept that certainly sometimes you're not good at things. And that
Right.
was probably
Right.
one of the things that I sort of took away from those failures at 2 Cents. I accepted that there was a level of business operations that I was not good at.
Right.
And that then sort of lent me to go, well, I don't want to go back into business again,
Right.
right? On my
Mm-hmm.
own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd had business partners in the previous operations, but none of them that were really particularly active in the business.
Right.
And so the second lesson was that if I was going to go into business again
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to build something again, I would do it with someone or some people
Mm-hmm.
who complemented my skill set.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
They had skills that I didn't have, and that they would bring something different to the table and
Right.
help in that way.
Hmm. So you found those two lessons. I mean, like it's very important to also find the perfect partner as well. And this for you was Matt. Talk to us a little bit about meeting Matt. And how did you complement each other? What were the skills that were overlapping? What were the gaps that you both filled when it comes to each other's roles? Talk to us a bit about that.
So we were introduced by another friend who actually in the original idea wanted to be in the business alone,
Right.
who wanted to be in the business with us as well.
Hmm.
Sorry, yeah. So there was going to be three of us, but Matt and I sort of felt that he had an existing business. He was very distracted. Matt and I weren't working for anybody. We didn't have any business. We were both kind of, we had to pay our own salaries, whereas
Right.
he had an existing business that was funding that. So
Of course.
Matt and I are very different. And again, complete respect for everything he's done for the business. And there's lots of stories that we've sort of been through together.
Hmm.
But he's very analytical. He's very numbers focused. He's much more cautious than I am.
Uh-huh.
He's just much more detail orientated,
Hmm.
and quite reserved. We wouldn't socialize. I mean, I've known him now 5 6 years.
Right.
We may have socialized together three times.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you're business partners, and you would consider yourselves good friends, but it's just not his personality.
I consider it. Yeah, no, look, I consider us friends. I've got, you know, I,
Hmm.
but we work well together.
Hmm.
I think the overlapping skills that we have is that we both are trying to create something that can. We're trying to create something that can grow without the need for huge investment from other
Right.
people. Like, no,
Hmm.
we own the business wholly. We don't have investors.
All
Nobody's
right.
ever invested in us.
Fantastic.
Um, and we're also we're very wary of growing the business in a way that it's profitable and isn't isn't putting us under pressure and under stress. We both
Precisely.
have families. We both have to look after families.
Precisely.
You know, which certainly in this day and age, I think you're seeing more of that happen now, where
Uh huh.
people are going, "Hey, we need to grow this business profitably."
Precisely.
Um, Without taking millions and millions and millions of dollars of investment and hoping that it'll
Precisely.
be valuable later on.
Because that's
So,
the pressure. Imagine the pressure of having all that, being responsible for the investors as well, having people, you know, on your neck, being like trying to run it, and it's a great
yeah,
approach now because you want to run it in such a way that you're not completely running yourself into the ground as well. And it's great that you have a partner that share the same kind of approach to business. It must be refreshing to feel that way as well.
yeah, it is. Look, and I'm not saying we agree with everything we do 100% all the time.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we've certainly we've had some big arguments. Not so much in the last year, but prior to
Right.
that, when we were under a bit of stress.
Hmm.
But and but I have utter respect for what he's created in the business in terms of the value that he's added to the business.
Right.
Um, some of the clients that he works with, love him and only want to work with him, which is fantastic.
Right.
Um, so, and I would trust him with, you know, decisions and, how we move forward with the business. Um, and it's interesting. We both have the common goal is that we don't want to work a lot.
Right.
You know, that's
Exactly.
there's all these people sort of advocating working 80-hour weeks and things like that.
No, 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 no.
I've got two young children, they're 8 and 5, and he's got two teenage children.
Hmm.
He wants to spend time watching them. I want to spend time hanging out with my kids.
Hmm.
The idea of sacrificing that to grow a business at all costs is not something either of us want to do.
Of course, and again, like it's a new approach, like you say, like people are starting to approach business a little more that way, where like uh, just we need to be functional as well. We can't be running a business where we're we're dead tired all the time, and what's the point, right? When you can't spend your time with your family. They say that the only people who remembers that you did overtime is your family, and that is never worth it. This is another interesting anecdote, another interesting story, because SEMO was launched right in the middle of pandemic, the global pandemic. So can you share with us the unique challenges you faced during this period? Of course, it's great. It's an advantage that it was all it's an online marketing, approach. But how do you? Why? First of all, why in the middle of a global pandemic, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Yeah, the why wasn't necessarily had anything really to do with the pandemic. It was more, um, it was fortuitous. We'd
Right.
been working with a client for a couple of years,
Hmm. Hmm.
and sort of 9 months previous to us launching this, she'd sort of said,
Right.
"Hey, thanks very much for all your help.
Hmm.
We don't need you anymore." And that was, that's fine. These things happen. And this was when we were just a digital marketing consultancy. So we were like a little agency, um, just doing our thing. And she sort of cancelled us, and we stayed friends with her. And then in the February of 2020, which I think is the month before everything got locked down, if I remember rightly, March 2020 was the point everybody went, "No, you're not leaving your houses."
Right.
But prior to that, she'd lost her marketing manager, and
Oh.
this girl had just quit, had rung up and said, "I'm not coming back in again." And
Okay.
this was before shit went to the
Hmm.
shit hit the
Hmm.
fan. And so this client rang us up and said, "Hey, I need someone to come in and work with me 1 day a week for the next 3 months while I hire somebody."
Right.
And we were like, "Hey, we didn't do that. That's not what we did." Um, but we had a girl that was sitting in our office who was quite heavily pregnant at the time. She was doing
Right.
some work for us. She's a friend of ours. I've known her for years.
Uh huh.
And she sort of said, I remember her sitting there in the office and she looked at me. She goes, "Hey, look, I'll go and do that." She
Oh
goes, "I'll
wow.
go and do that for a day a week.
Uh huh.
It's
Uh huh.
Mondays. I don't really do a lot on Mondays."
Hmm. Hmm.
She was like, I can go and do that.
Okay.
So we went, "All right, then will you go and do that?" And the client loved her and said, "Hey, look,
Okay.
can she come in 1 day a week every week? Handle my social media, handle my EDMs, do some updates on the website for us." And I was like,
Interesting.
"Not a problem."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, Next thing you know, we had someone in that with that client doing that for 2.5 years.
Wow. Right there.
So it just it was we sort of realized the light bulb went on at that moment where we went,
Hmm.
that's what the clients want. They
Right.
want the help.
Hmm.
They want someone who's good at what they do. Importantly, they want that person in the office.
Right.
They want them to be sitting there in a desk opposite them so they can talk to them.
Right.
This was where remote work wasn't even a thing at that point.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and so that's where it came from. People were going, "Hey, look, I want a social media manager, but I don't want to hire someone full time because I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want
Precisely.
that cost on my P&L.
Hmm.
I don't want to use an agency because agencies are trying to charge me $175 an hour
Hmm.
for someone to do account management who I don't even see."
Hmm.
Um, and so we sit in the middle. We said, well, let's start doing fractional marketing people.
There you go. There you
Um,
go.
be that social media, be that strategists, be that graphic designers. We've done
Hmm.
everything.
Precisely. So now,
Um,
right. So that's a perfect transition to my next question, which is fractional marketing concept. This concept of
yeah,
where you sit in between, a full service agency or, like a part time or full time social media
yeah,
manager and whatnot. But why fractional marketing concept? Simo introduced the concept, and for marketing teams in Australia. Can you explain to us what that concept means? What is fractional marketing, and why is it
yeah.
becoming an important trend for
It's
businesses?
it's a it's a very Americanized word, and it's not it's not it's new to Australia. It's not new to America. It's been around for a long time in
Right,
America.
right, right.
Their fractional CMOs they're quite prevalent in the US
Hmm.
market,
Hmm.
which is essentially having a chief marketing officer 1 day a week or
Right.
4 days 4 days a month or something like that. So
Hmm.
it's quite prevalent in the US. So the term isn't overly well used in Australia. But we found it went better. It was bigger than just fractional marketing. It was bigger than just fractional CMOs. It was like people were like, "Hey, I want a graphic designer 1 day a week." And we're like, "Okay, all right, well,
Okay.
we can find you one." I mean,
Hmm.
there's lots of graphic designers out there who will do that, but we
Right.
then do the recruiting. We make sure they're good at what they do. We send them to someone. I mean, literally, I've had someone call me on a Thursday and someone started on the Monday.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Right.
that's how quickly we can sort of turn that thing around.
Interesting.
Um, so, so that's the fractional idea. You could call it part time. You could call it contractor, but it's kind of got its own. It's kind of got its own sort of terminology and its own, definition that sort
Right.
of goes beyond just contractors or goes
Right.
beyond just part time.
It's almost like
Um,
freelancing, but they only come into. It's almost like freelancing, but regular, right? Like again, it sits in the
it's
middle, right?
yeah, it is. It is. Look, it is kind of a bit more of a structured, what I would call structured freelancing.
There you
Absolutely,
go.
that's
Yes, you
that's
go.
that's probably that's
Hmm.
probably a good way of saying it. But
Hmm.
fractional makes it sound a bit more kind of official and fancy and
Yeah,
things
and
like that.
fancy and
So
professional.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
fractional.
yeah,
Ooh, very, very business
yeah.
complex.
And again, it's hard because if you look at some of the senior people, I mean, we've got a
Mm.
lady who works for us with 40 years corporate experience,
Wow,
right?
wow.
She's been the CMO she's been the head of marketing for huge organizations across
Right.
Australia, right?
Hmm.
Would I ever call her a freelancer? Absolutely not.
Absolutely
That
not.
she's not
Hmm.
that term doesn't work for her. It's not
Hmm.
that's not a good description for her.
Yeah, precisely.
But I would call her a fractional marketing
Wow,
director
interesting.
or a fractional
Interesting.
CMO.
So they come in once in a week, maybe four times a month, maybe twice a week. They come in, they have their tasks done, and these are mostly what you offer is mostly marketing services. So they come in, they have their task for the week. They probably post social media. They probably come up with marketing campaigns, and they
Yeah,
do it as needed. How do you come up with
yeah.
the frequency of the task, and how do you come up with like how often they come in and basically
Well, that's normally down to the client, but
there you go.
generally we go back to the client and say, look, it's unfair. If you want someone good, you're going to need to give them regular days.
Precisely.
You know,
Hmm.
if you just say to them, "Hey, I'm going to call you up this week if I need you," they're not going to be available. They'll go and work for someone else. They'll get
Of
another
course, of
job. They're
course.
not just sitting around on their sofa waiting, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for someone to,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
call them. So there's a level of saying down to the client, if you want someone good, you have to offer a sort of an element of stability. But we don't have long contracts. We don't sit there and say, "Hey, you're tied into for 12 months." It's maximum 30 days. So from our perspective, we have to make sure that match is good right at the start.
Interesting.
Um, so if we get a good match, we know that that contract's going to go on for a long
Yes,
time.
precisely. So
So
it's
that
not
for
a,
us, that is the key thing.
of course, so it's not a long contract, but you usually start with 30 days maximum because you want to deliver that quality within those first 30 days. What do you do within those first 30 days, and how long do these contracts usually last after those 30 days?
I mean, look, we've had some that have lasted years, 2, 3. I mean, we've got some clients that we've had since we started the
Wow,
business, 4 or 5
interesting.
years. So
Hmm.
I've got one that's gone into a not for profit. She's just going in there for 2 months. That's what they
Interesting.
wanted.
Wow.
That's what they needed.
Hmm.
So it really sort of boils down to what the client needs. And one thing that I stress, and we stress this to clients, and this is kind of a little bit hard for some people to sort of understand. We're not we're not guaranteeing the work that the fractional person does, right?
Huh.
I'll give you I'll give you this metaphor.
Please
We
elaborate.
often turn around and say, if you imagine we were a builder, okay,
Right.
we're going to supply you with bricks, and we're going to
Okay.
supply you with really good bricks that
Mm-hmm.
we know are good, that will hold up the house, that look good, and all
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What you do with the bricks is entirely up to you, right?
Interesting.
So we're the brick supplier, you're the builder, we're giving you the bricks.
Hmm.
If you don't use the bricks in the right way, that's your problem, not ours.
Interesting.
Right? So there is still an element of the client is responsible for getting the best out of the person that we give them,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But we are giving them the best person to suit their needs.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
in that sense, we're not responsible for what they do in those first 30 days or the first 3 months or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're responsible that they are qualified to what they do, that
Exactly.
they turn up on time, all those kind of things.
Uh-huh.
And we've had people ring us up going, "Hey, your person's in the office and she's looking at her own personal social media," and we're like, "Well, what do you want us to do about that? It's nothing to do. You talk to them. They're your employee. They're contracted through us, but they're your employee. Talk to them as though they were your employee."
Interesting. So how do you now approach that, knowing that, okay, so they come in at a fractional, like a fractional setting, you give them highly qualified candidates, they come in like once a week, twice a week, but this is important because it's up to the clients to think of how they're going to utilize those once a week or twice a week that they come into. But at the same time, you are completely hands off in what they do within those days. How do you meet that kind of need where the client is wanting that particular quality of work to be done at such a, you know, once a week? I can't imagine how work can be done in that time. But how do you
Well, again, I
guarantee
mean, look,
that?
yeah, look, it depends on the volume of work.
Right.
Some of these, it might be a very small business that just says,
Hmm.
"Hey, we want someone to come in and put 3 posts on social media and send out an EDM or and make some
Interesting.
website updates." So those sort of things can be done in a day for the smarter people. They might want them to write a blog or something like that.
Right.
So
Okay.
some of them, it's just like a little bit of maintenance. It's
Right.
stuff that
Right.
they
Right.
don't want to do themselves.
Mm-mm.
They just want someone else to
Interesting.
do it.
So it's almost like also a hybrid virtual assistant where they come in
Yeah,
like.
kind of. Yeah, but again, the key thing is it's qualified and they're local and they're in the business. So,
Interesting.
but for the senior ones, sometimes they're in there 2 or 3 days a week. Sometimes they're in meetings. They're working with the CEO. They're building strategy, working with suppliers, upskilling internal staff.
Wow.
The list is endless, and that's from our perspective. When we go in and take that first brief,
Uh huh.
we need to make sure that brief is accurate because often a lot of clients don't know what they
Right.
need. Um,
Very interesting. And that is
so
how
they
you.
come to us and yeah, and then they'll give us that brief, and then we'll try and find someone that matches that.
Interesting. And then that is how you come up with the coming up with, okay, this is exactly what you need, this is a strategy, this is the frequency where you need it at, and these are the tasks that you need done. Boom, this is a person, she's perfect, he's perfect, and he'll get this done for you. And now that's where the whole product really kind of like boils down
Mm,
together, right? The whole service where you I love the whole concept now. It's making more sense of fractional, right? Because
mm,
we fill in the gaps where you need them exactly, but we don't have to pour in all the bricks, right? We don't have to pour in all that stuff for
yeah,
you because we're just filling in these fractions that you need
yeah.
exactly where you need them with the best talent and possible.
And
Where
I'll
do you
give you a good
know?
example.
Go ahead. Go
I'll,
ahead,
I'll give you a good example very quickly on that. We had a
please.
client that started with us 2 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
I get the not for profit, and the lady that had come to us originally said, "I need someone 4 days a week," and I said, "Well,
Mhm.
what do you need them to do?" And she listed out all the things that she needed to do, and I just went, "You don't need someone 4 days a week. You need someone 2 days a week." And she was like, and most people would sit there and go, "Well, you're doing yourself out of money or revenue," and I'm like, "Look, the jobs that she need could be done in 2 days, and I've saved her half of what she thought she was going to spend." But
Interesting.
that's me going back and saying, I've got someone that can do all that in 2 days. And she was like, "Hey,
Mhm.
if you can, that'd be amazing." And I'm like,
That's fantastic.
match them up, job done.
So you also do, of course, maximize these other talents as well, or you kind of just, okay, so 2 days for this particular client, you spend another 2 days for this particular client, another 2 days for this other client. You fill out the entire week for them to do. Does that always happen, or is it something like,
If no, that rarely happens.
wow,
Most
interesting?
of these consultants, most of these CMOs, we call them CMOs, Most
Mhm.
of these CMOs have their own clients. They have their own
Interesting,
clients that
of
they work
course.
with, for the rest of the week. So, for example, Sarah, who's been with us for 4 years, she might do 2 days a week with us and 3 days a week with her own client.
Interesting.
The one I was just talking about, she actually does 2 days with one client, one of our clients, one day with one of her other clients, one day with another one of our clients, and then one day for us. So she's
Interesting.
doing 5 days, 5 different days with 4 different clients.
Interesting. Then this more kind of like gives more perspective to the whole fractional thing, right? It's just very
Yeah.
fractional in that sense because it's not like, again, not full time. You can do your own thing, and they're only paid for those particular days that you work with them, but they get the job done. Simon,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting concept. To me, it's unique. You know, you say it's Americanized, has been around for a long time. It's new in Australia, and you guys are sort of pioneering this concept, and I love it. I really want to dig more into it. Definitely check out your website as well. To all our audience and listeners, I welcome you to check out cemo.com. That's CEMOH.com. Simon, as we near the end of this, we start wrapping this up. I want to dig into more of your professional and personal balance. You talk a lot about that. You say you don't want to work yourself to the ground running the business. You have two kids, you have a family, you are a business owner, you are a writer. How do you are, everything. You balance your family life, your professional responsibilities, your personal responsibilities, especially raising two boys and writing science fiction novels. How do you balance life and work?
I do a lot. I'm actually, I'm a single dad half of the time
Mm-hmm.
because they spend half of their time with me. They spend half of their time with their mum. When the kids are with me, I'll take them to school. I'll pick them up from school. I'm as present as I possibly can be with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We they go to all their sports, and we do a lot of stuff together. So I basically try and cram in a work day for about 5 hours in the day,
Wow.
and then I might do like another hour, a couple of hours in the evening once they've gone to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're awake and when they're here, I'm very present with them.
Interesting.
So that's the flip side is the other week when I don't have them, I'll work a lot more.
There you
More
go.
meetings, later meetings,
Mm-hmm.
more activity around work, all those kind of things. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of helps me get that balance. And that week that when I'm without them, I get a lot of time to myself. And the first thing people think when they're separating or marriages are falling apart, you kind of think, oh, I'm not going to get to see my kids all the time. And I
Right.
have to say, and I love them to bits, and they're my world. But it's great to get a couple of days of peace and quiet to
Of course.
yourself.
Of course. Of course.
So there's lots. So I'm fortunate to live in a place where there's a lot of places to walk out in nature and up
Mm-hmm.
mountains and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I do a lot of
Interesting.
walking. I
Okay.
coach a lot of football. I do a lot of writing. So
Wow.
I make sure I really try and spend time on myself.
Wow. So, first of all, Simon, I mean, it is quite the challenge as well, but you are dealing with it like it's a work life, personal balance, but also for your personal life. You keep a little balance of that as well. Make sure
Mm.
you're outside, make sure you have, time with family, you have time with business. And it's not always easy, but again, you do quite this fractional approach as well, right? You're a single dad half of the time, you're a science fiction novel writer, and you walk outside, you do your business at the same time, maybe sometimes in the evening as well. It's a great approach to life, a great approach to business, as you've shown as it has you proven to us today as well. I'm quite interested. I would love to keep in touch with you and talk more
Yeah,
about this
absolutely.
fractional marketing concept of yours. Before I let you go, Simon, where can we find you? Of course, we have your website. Where are you most active in? Are you on Instagram? Are you on LinkedIn? Let our audience and listeners know.
I LinkedIn is probably where I spend most of my time from a sort of professional sense.
Hmm.
So I'm quite easy to find Simon Dell on LinkedIn. There's a couple of other Simon Dells, but it's pretty obvious which one's me. But yeah, otherwise Simon at cmo.com. My first proper book being published. Should, fingers crossed, be coming out in March 2025.
Wow,
And
interesting.
I've got a website that I'm building there. I think it's simondellauthor.com. So I try to keep that separate as
All right,
well.
it's
So
very,
yeah.
very interesting stuff. I am quite the science fiction enthusiast myself, so I would definitely look out for
Cool.
that. Our audience and listeners as well, I invite you all to follow Simon, check out his LinkedIn, check out his website. And Simon, before we bring this home, anything else that you want to tell us? One last thing with the audience and listeners, take us home.
I think what we've discussed today about that work-life balance is the most important thing.
Hmm.
I've seen we didn't go into it today, but 2-3 years ago, I was in a very, very low place.
Right.
I would say I'm a big advocate for men's mental health, especially men sort of my age, because they tend to want to kill themselves for, reasons nobody understands.
Hmm.
Talk to people. I see my tip, wherever you are in business, talk to people.
Right.
Never. I worked with a guy once whose motto was never miss an opportunity, and he would go for coffee. He would go and meet anyone. He'd just talk to people, even
Right.
if he didn't think it was worth. Even if there was no perception of an immediate return, he would just go and talk to people, learn from people, and take away that information. And I think
Interesting.
that's extremely valuable. Spend your time talking to people, understand who they are, ask them questions, learn about people, talk to them about what you're doing.
Mhm.
It's amazing how much, as humans, we should spend more time engaging with each other.
Absolutely. And also to be able to have that avenue to express yourself, to let it all out is very
Mm,
important, especially for men, because we don't get
yes.
that chance often. And again, like for reasons people don't understand except us, it's just difficult to kind of express that. But we need support system around us. We need people to talk to. And I love
Yeah,
that message.
absolutely.
I'm all for that, Simon. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Let's keep in touch. And again, thank you so much for being on here.
My pleasure, mate. Thank you.
And to all our audience and listeners out there, see you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.